Okay, are we? Okay, right. In that case, welcome everybody to the January Derby Homes board meeting. And if it's not too late in, it's still January, to wish everybody a Happy New Year.
And the same to you.
Or as happy as we can manage under the present circumstances. Before we start, I would just like to welcome officially Charlene, who's I believe is going to be our new tenant board member. So welcome to the board, Charlene.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And if we can just try and do some introductions, so we have met before, Charlene, but I'm Mike Ainsley, chair of the board.
Charlene, I know you know me, so I'm saying no more.
Okay.
Hi, Charlene. I'm Sarah Russell, one of the councillors on the board.
Right, Ian, you're muted. I think we can't hear you.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Hello, Charlene. I'm one of the other councillors on the board.
Hi.
Alan Graves.
Hello, Charlene. I'm Ian MacDonald. I'm an independent board member.
Hi.
Hi, Charlene. It's Jan. I'm really pleased that you've joined the board.
Thank you.
And I'm Lucy Kerr, another of the councillors, and we met earlier.
Hi, Lucy.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Okay, if we could, after that, if we can move on. The only apologies I've had tonight is from Rachel North, who sent her apologies.
Okay.
Yeah. Item two. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Mike, it was Jen. I just wanted to introduce myself to Charlotte, but I was muted.
Sorry, Jen. Yes.
So, yeah, hi, Charlotte. I'm Jen Leighton-Annable. I'm the other tenant board member, the inescapable mute button issue. Nice to meet you.
Hi, good to meet you.
Okay. Right, item 2, late items. Maria has a confidential late item, verbal one, which I'll take as B6, if that's okay with everybody.
Fine, please.
Declarations of interest. Is any declarations of interest other than the usual?
Usual.
All right. In that case, if we can go on to the non-confidential minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November. First of all, if we could just check them for accuracy. Looking at the pages there, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Nobody said anything, so can I take silence as say that acceptance of these is a true record?
Accepted.
Yes,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Going back again then for any matters arising which aren't going to crop up anywhere else on the agenda. Again, page 1, page 2, page 3. Well, we've no, I guess page 3.
Yeah.
Page 4. Page 5, 6, 7.
Oh, bless you.
Bless you. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And 15.
No issues, Chair.
Right, good. No issues. I've no announcements from the chair. Have we any statements from members of the board? Okay. Any questions from the members of the public, Jackie? No?
Sorry, no, Mike. No,
Chair. Okay, thank you. So moving on to committee chairs feedback, item 9, Bob, operational board, 3rd of December.
Right, I'll try and keep this brief. I've highlighted a couple of things I just wanted to say in passing. We've recruited 2 new members to the operational board, Kevin Alloway, who currently serves on Customer Voice, and Natasha Cover, who serves as a member of Community Action Derby. And as you will have gathered, Charlene's now serving on the main board, and I'd like to express my thanks for her time and efforts over the past few months. And I'm thinking that response for the operational board was 2 in the last round of recruiting, so I think perhaps we have another look at recruiting members if we can. On item 2088, performance management, whilst the operational board does look at the figures and etc. and challenges, in consultation with David, I think it would be valid to in future bring exception reports to the main board just so that any red flags can be identified, and that would, you know, us being proactive as opposed to reactive. And David and I are going to discuss this, so I just thought I'd mention that. The customer voice report on the quality of repairs was excellent. I think that they should be congratulated and applauded on the very detailed and contents of it, and I applaud what they've done. The home decoration scheme, we agreed on new terms for that. We're now happy with that. And the team have been doing the decoration during COVID. I'd like to say a big thank you to Jackie Woodford and Gary Buxton for the work they're doing to ensure the scheme still carries on for all those tenants who wish to carry it on. Grounds maintenance was covered, and I think I'm going to put my neck on the line here and think we may have got round that corner in initial progress being made, and I think we're actually getting there, guys, honestly. We covered the complaints policy, the new complaints policy, and the Derby one is based on the Ombudsman's complaint handling code. So I think that's about it, guys, unless there's anybody got any questions. The thing is on CMIS anyway. I've just tried to cover what I thought were the ones that maybe more interest. I'm not saying the others are not interesting, but these are the ones I thought we'd bring to the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions to Bob about that? Okay, if we could then just look at item 10, outstanding actions. You'll see there's 2 of them, and they're both in the future. So unless anybody has any comments, we'll pass straight on to item 11, which is to note the urgent action agreed by, well, it's signed by Chair and Vice Chair. In effect, it was agreed by both Vice Chairs and myself. Any questions, any comments on that?
No.
No. Okay. Moving on then to part A. Are there anybody who wishes to discuss anything from part C?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. Right, Maria, over to you then. Managing Director's report.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Board members will have already obviously read the report, and you'll see that it does feel like it's becoming a regular now. I'm giving you an update on the COVID position, particularly the fact that we're in national lockdown again and the impacts that that is having on our service provision. As you can see, I'm covering off information that I think you've already seen in the updates that I send out anyway. But the particular points I draw to your attention are at paragraph 4.5. We do have a legal responsibility to allow tenants to carry out mutual exchanges, and that has been quite difficult during the period of the pandemic. A mutual exchange is where 2 tenants literally swap homes with each other. So we do not have that opportunity of either home being vacated for any period of time. We did suspend mutual exchanges for a while, but given the fact that house moves are still taking place in the private sector, which very much mirror a mutual exchange, we've, well, at the time of writing the report, we were putting in place safe working practices. They are now in place, and the housing management teams have been working with all tenants that were in the process, and where they're wanting to continue, we have put risk assessments in place to enable that to happen. Has anybody got any questions on that or anything prior to that before I move on? Nope. Right, moving through then, I'm really just outlining to you that as well as trying to cover Derby Home's responsibilities, we are continuing to support the council as well. And a number of our employees have been reallocated to help in key roles. And one area where we've been providing a lot of support is on the public protection role that the COVID support officers have been doing. And I'm sure that you'll be pleased to hear we have had absolute glowing feedback, both in terms of the attitude of staff that have gone over to help and also the skills that they have for talking to some members of the public who might not be cooperative. So I think working in housing has given them a good background to pick up all those skills. We've got very, very few staff in the offices at the moment for obvious reasons, but we are still trying to balance those opportunities for people who are suffering from mental health issues through isolation. And we are still continuing to have a senior management team member on site at London Road each day and a senior manager on site at Stockbrook Street. All of the risk assessments have been reviewed and I'm satisfied that everything is still fit for purpose. The one area that I am starting to get a little worried about, though, is the inevitable workforce fatigue that is starting to set in. I just think it is worth acknowledging that staff are getting tired, and we are trying to put in place as much as we can to support them. I'm sure that the announcement last night that schools definitely will not be going back until March at the earliest is going to be terribly difficult for staff who are trying to homeschool and work at the same time. But I just wanted to assure you that we are doing everything that we can to support people. We are encouraging everyone to take time out and use annual leave, myself included. I won't be around next week, but it is really important that people do look after themselves. Any questions, or shall I move on to the next section?
Maria, could I just feed back?
Yeah, sure, Jen.
I just wanted to say that over the last 6 weeks, I've had a number of interactions with staff in the housing officers team and also maintenance and contractors. And I just wanted to underline how exemplary the responsiveness and work and attitudes that I have encountered. I have noticed no difference whatsoever between when we've been out of lockdown and in lockdown. Everybody has been incredibly supportive to help solve problems that have come up through no fault of people's own, and I just think it is particularly poignant to reflect on that, obviously when you are now encountering the tiredness and individual difficulties that the workforce are encountering. But for me as a tenant, it has not impacted on the experiences I've had, and everybody really has gone above and beyond the call of duty to help me sort out one particular issue that I've had in my house. So I just wanted to fill that in with that.
Well, I'm really grateful for that feedback, Jen, because I know that you are always very honest with your feedback, and I'll make sure that that goes through to the teams concerned. I think we've got Bob, Chair.
Yeah, Bob and then Alan.
Yeah.
Bob?
Talk to us, Bob. You're on mute.
Sorry, Marie, I was on mute. That's a rarity, that is. But just a quick question. On the 424, it says you only had sort of one eviction. That was for an abandoned property. Can you just refresh my memory very quickly? How does one constitute a property as being abandoned? What is the very basic guidelines?
You've actually skipped on to part of the report I've not covered yet, Bob.
Cover them.
An abandoned property, we have to go through quite a process and a number of checks to establish that a property has not been occupied for a given time. We will have to serve a notice which satisfies the legal requirements. But there is a whole process, Bob, that we have to go through, and it's generally things like the gas and electric meters not having moved on, goods having been removed, the such like.
That's fine. I just couldn't remember in my head what I did do it at one time, but I don't know. Thank you. Sorry to jump ahead.
Right. Alan.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo Jen's contribution. As a councillor's perspective, the staff in Derby Homes have been particularly good going through this process. I have to say that residents' problems don't go away just because there's a pandemic. In fact, I would say that they probably get worse because they're all on top of each other. And I have to say that people, the Derby Homes employees, have been particularly good at dealing with all these individual issues with all the restrictions in place. So I'd like to commend them.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Feedback for the teams that are working on the front line is really, really important. And I absolutely will get that back to them. Just to reassure you all as board members as well, our trades teams that are now out and about daily working in people's homes, they have now been availed the opportunity of regular testing at the Riverside Centre. Now, the teams have worked really hard this week in ensuring that it doesn't cause too many problems in terms of appointments that are already made for customers. But every trades employee has been offered the opportunity to be tested once a week within works time. And I think that is really important because it will help to further protect the customers whose homes they're working in and also the teams that they are working with. We are going to have to plan for disruption because obviously if someone tests positive, they have to go straight home and self-isolate. But I think for the wider public health benefits and the welfare of our staff, their families and our customers, it's the right thing to do. And over the coming weeks, we will, as the testing centre at the Riverside ramps up, we will be looking to offer that out to other colleagues across the organisation that are working outside of their home. There is no point now for staff who are working from home to leave their home to go for a test and potentially pick it up. So it is being absolutely targeted at staff who cannot work from home. And the feedback from our trades teams has been really positive.
Thank you, Maria. Do you want to carry on with the
May I just ask on that, Chair? Maria, how many people have actually tested positive through that scheme?
Nobody today.
Yes. Thank you.
Today's been the first day of appointments.
Oh, right. Okay.
But still good news.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. And just as an aside, over the last day or so, our HR advisor has done some analysis for me on all of our employee cases where someone has tested positive since we started recording it last year. And what that has shown us is there is no pattern that indicates we've got any weaknesses in our risk assessments. One may kind of be inclined to think that those making home visits are at greater risk, but the actual positive cases are not bearing that out. So it gives me confidence that the risk assessments, the PPE and everything that our staff are doing is absolutely doing the job that it needs to do. So that gives us reassurance. Moving on with the report then.
Hang on, Maria. Jen wanted to come back again.
Hi, Maria. So a question that I wanted to ask you. One of the things that I've encountered recently is that there appears to be the test and trace system is actually beginning to kind of kick in now. And certainly in the last week, I've had 3 occurrences where people either contractors at Derby Homes or people I had engaged privately have had to delay or postpone work because they were either waiting for a test or had actually contracted COVID. Now, I'm just wondering what, if anything, can be done to mitigate the impact of that higher awareness of, you know, first of all, of the test and trace seeming to be more efficient, but also it seems like there is a higher level of COVID kind of amongst the general population anyway, and I'm just wondering if that might have been considered.
Yeah, it has been considered, Jen, and actually that was the primary reason that we turned off routine repairs.
Okay.
We anticipated that we were going to see peaks and troughs in people having to self-isolate and such like, and felt that the best way of managing it was to focus on the essential, more serious repairs. And what we're doing is moving staff around teams so that we've, at the moment, touch wood, we're managing to maintain adequate cover. Now, as it stands at the moment, we're not seeing any big increases in the numbers of staff having to self-isolate or take time off because of positive cases, but we are kind of static at around 18 to 20 employees at any one time in that category, but it just goes up and down. If it stays like that, it's manageable. If it goes up, which quite honestly, there's every chance it might do, because you're right, as test and trace actually track and trace starts to track and trace, it should mean more people are notified and told to stay at home. And we're just going to have to go with it, Jen. And I think the key thing will be timely communications to customers, because I think most customers, if they know what's happening, they understand. It's just when you're sat at home and no one turns up, that's what we need to avoid. We just need to let people know.
And Maria, that's crucial. Don't just have a void. If you're not going to turn up for whatever reason, just let somebody know. And I can speak from a recent experience about this. It's good. Just somebody just says, we're not coming. People accept that because they know. It's when they're sitting there not knowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Right. Maria, I think you can carry on now.
Excellent. Just, there's a few points there for you, giving you the follow-up action on the staff survey. Really just to reassure board members that when staff tell us something, we follow it up. What we are doing though now, thanks to the Health and Safety Exec issuing some revised guidance earlier this week, we are now having to revisit the working from home situation, asking all staff to complete an assessment as to how they're working, the equipment that they've got, and is there anything further that we need to do. And that will be happening over the next couple of months, just to ensure that we're complying with all of the duty of care that we've got to staff. I think it's obvious we can't create a home office in everyone's home, but it's about mitigating the risks to our colleagues' health through the working conditions and being able to evidence that we've done that. So we've reacted very quickly. The health and safety team spotted this update come straight through, and we're on with that. So on to the next part of my report, which actually ties in quite nicely with Bob saying that the operational board are going to be having some exception reporting up to the board in future on performance. I felt that it was timely, really, just to give you a picture of how the pandemic is affecting Derby Homes' performance in some key areas. And the first one that I've started with is probably the most obvious, and that's the impact on our ability to collect rent, or rather the ability of our tenants to be able to pay their rent. First of all, I just want to say, no, it doesn't look good. Arrears have gone up considerably. But the reassurance is that the increase is completely consistent with Housemarque's forecast. And you will know that Housemark are the nationally recognised benchmarking group that we work with. I've gone into quite a lot of detail there for you, which I don't intend on reading through, but you can see in paragraph 4.23, 113 tenants do owe over £2,000, which is a lot of money. And for people who are on a limited income, that is going to be a lot of money for them to pay back over a long period of time. I think you're all aware that evictions remain suspended for the time being. So the focus at the moment is working with people, encouraging them to pay what they can, ensuring that they're maximising their income as much as they can. But there will come a point, I worry, that when the courts reopen again, there will be quite a tsunami. Firstly, in the private sector, I'm very worried because that has a knock-on effect to homelessness. In our sector, I'm less worried because we have a responsibility towards our tenants, and we will work with them to ensure that homelessness or eviction is an absolute last resort. Chair, do you want to take questions at that point?
Yeah, Maria, are there any questions? Ian?
We've got
Ian
Jen and Ian.
No, I think Jen was a previous question. It's Ian and Lucy.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Chair, on those arrears, some of which are quite considerable, what is the intention that we're going to do about that? And I'm asking this in the context that I think that overall these arrears, although high, given the number of tenants we have, most of our tenants are doing what they should do and continuing to pay their rent. But if I put myself in a tenant's shoes who's doing that, and if I think there are lots of people not bothering to pay their rent and getting away with it, I might change my behaviour. And I'm just wondering what we intend to do about the situation that we find ourselves in regarding this.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief on that, but reassuring. You'll see at 4.25, I've already alluded to the fact that not having any kind of threat of court action at the moment is making it difficult to engage with some of the harder to engage customers.
I understand totally about it in the moment, Maria. I'm talking about
as we move
this line down, we move through this. What do we intend to do?
As we move forward, Ian, there will always be an element of people who have chosen not to pay. And the people who continue to choose not to pay, we will prioritise to take through court proceedings. For the vast majority, though, it will be a case of working with them to form agreements for affordable payment plans, because the last thing that we want to be doing is making a situation worse where somebody's change of circumstances has put them into this position. So it will be a balanced approach, but can't pay due to genuine circumstances is very different to people who won't pay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Lucy?
And thank you. I was wondering whether there are any messages that we're learning here of if there's a typical person or household that is unable to pay, and if we're able to translate that into providing more targeted support so that people don't get into this situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's something actually that Michael Kirk could discuss in quite a lot of detail at the operational board, Lucy. I know that they are progressing plans to purchase some software that allows profiling of our customers. We're already looking at demographic data, though. But I really think that is something for the operational board to have a bigger discussion around. The thing that we have got at the moment is no particular pattern emerging other than those people that have either been furloughed because they've been in hospitality and retail, or where people have lost their jobs. That is certainly something that we will be making use of as we go forward.
Thank you.
And I think, Maria, it is important that we do establish the can't from the won't. I mean, the can't, and there are people out there, you know, I'm not proud to admit it, but I've been in the way gone distant past. I had some problems, and I was grateful for the help that I got, you know, and I can relate that to today's situation where people can't pay, particularly when it's their home, as opposed to won't pay. And I think it's good if we're going down that road to try and help them and identify them.
Yeah, I'm absolutely able to reassure you on that, because that is the ethos of how we manage income. Moving through the report, I'm then covering the issue around repairs, both day-to-day repairs and capital works. And the issue there that I just want board to be aware of is that we have been managing demand, but we are storing up repairs that will be reported to us at some point in the future. And again, on capital works around kitchens and bathrooms, I think everybody's already aware that the programme hasn't been fully effective this year for all good reasons that we're aware of. But again, there is going to be a need to understand how we catch up or reprofile the programme as we move forward. And I think around both of those issues, again, it's going to need to be carefully communicated to customers, because we certainly have to manage their expectations on day-to-day repairs. It is going to take us time to get back to operating as normal, even though I don't think that's going to start happening for a good few months yet. But we're just going to start planning for how we are going to do it. And probably the biggest area that we're going to do some planning around.
Sorry, that's me.
The biggest area that we're going to plan around is, in fact, the frontline homelessness service. Because without a doubt, I think the pandemic has caused some households to be more sympathetic. We have seen lower numbers potentially around younger people coming forward. The eviction ban has definitely kept people in homes that will be forced to present as homeless going forward. And it is going to be a challenge when we have to meet that demand as it comes through. So each director is going to do some forward planning, and we will bring reports back to subsequent meetings on where we think the biggest impact and the biggest demands are going to be, so that as a board you can be involved in how we handle that. But I think the time's right. We need to start looking at moving forward, even though we're not quite there yet. Now, that's fine. Nobody's chirped up.
Yeah, just going to say, Maria, just very quickly, on the day-to-day repairs, are we actively encouraging people to report the repair, even though it's a day-to-day, so you can get an idea of what's out there, or are you putting people off reporting it full stop?
No, Bob. At the moment, we're asking people to hold off and come back to us when we let them know that we can deal with it.
I wasn't sure.
Otherwise, we'd have had a backlog of jobs to input into the system before we even started. And everybody can see Claire's comment relating to hidden domestic abuse at the moment, which I'm sure is going to be another huge pressure for us. Okay. Finally, yep, Lucy.
Sorry, thank you. May I just ask if we're seeing any change in the mix of people coming up as homeless, coming on to Home Finder? Because as well as the splitting of households where we've got domestic abuse and other things, we've actually also seen households coming together where single people don't want to live alone when they can't mix. And I just wondered if that's resulted in more requests for maybe 2 beds or something.
I don't think there's anything kind of noticeable come through on that, Lucy. What is noticeable though is what's not coming through, which really does indicate we are going to see a surge in demand at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now I really would be remiss if I didn't just draw your attention and say, all board members, please read paragraph 4.35, and I'm very much looking forward to bringing that report to you in March 2021.
Well done, Maria.
Okay.
Okay. Right, there's no further questions. David, move on to A3 finance update.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First thing in my report is our current operational budget monitoring. I've got a bit of an update on that because I wrote this 2 weeks ago, and this week we got a Q3 update, and our forecast is for an underspend is creeping up. We now think it's going to be somewhere around the 2 to 2.5 million mark. Now, mostly we've been analysing why that is, and mostly that's because of deferred works relating to painting, both internal and external. And most of that in turn is been driven by our huge optimism in September when we last did a forecast that we'd recover all our spending plans because at that time it looked like the pandemic was on the wane. Clearly that's now gone the other way, and unfortunately we've not been able to catch up as much as we rather hoped. So clearly our underspend in terms of what we've been given and what we've been able to spend has increased quite substantially. So that work will all still need to be done, of course. It's very much like the tsunamis in other areas that Maria's already talked about. So I am expecting sort of a massive catch-up, not only in those areas we've already talked about, but in painting and in other areas next year. So we'll have to see if that's actually physically possible, of course. And but I thought it's definitely worth me mentioning that our underspend, or operational underspend at least, will probably rise still further. Secondly, on the NHF Code of Governance that we talked about at the last board meeting, rather than sort of rush something through for you, because we have clarified the point about 6 years and 9 years at the last board meeting, but to do a proper self-assessment, for those of you who were around last year, will recall what we do normally is to take a report to the Governance Committee in April and on to the board in May to establish whether we're compliant or not. So rather than do that job twice, what I'd prefer to do, if it's all right with you, is to do that job, if like, against the new Code of Governance to make sure we can comply, take that report to the Governance Committee, and then the Governance Committee can determine whether to recommend to move from the 2015 to the 2020 code or not, as the case may be. So when we do that job properly, hopefully we can come back to you, not in the next board meeting, but the meeting after. Third item is about right to buy receipts. Nationally, there's been a pattern of a 40% reduction this financial year, or at least the first half of the year, in terms of the number of right to buys that have gone through. Again, that's not very surprising because the first 2 or 3 months, the house moves were actually banned at the time. So clearly nobody was going to buy their property because it wasn't as easy as it might have been in normal times. So there was a big dip, and Derby's numbers were also down by about 40% at that point in time, although we are again expecting a bit of a bounce back in the new year. So again, as with a lot of these issues that we're talking about tonight, there's not very huge certainty about where we're going, but the expectation is we'll just return at some point to sort of a normal level. And of course, if there were to be fewer sales, that would please me, because clearly we're then holding on to more stock and more ability to let to prospective tenants. And then finally in this report, agreements with the council. Mary's already mentioned the potential for an agreement, but there's also been a long discussion with the council about the homelessness service and the SLA up until the point of our new contract, and that has now been confirmed by the council, and we're just waiting for the paperwork to come through. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Yeah, I think possibly you're right there, Lucy. But
absolutely,
the comment you've made. Any other comments, questions to David on this? If not, we'll move on then to Sean, property update.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, everyone. I've managed to get my computer working in the end. I don't know. you get past 50 and you just lose the ability, don't you, to even turn the computer on properly. I don't know. Okay, so you've got my report in front of you. The first is the usual bit of my report, which is the new build update. What I will mention to you is that we've completed the work to the 9 bungalows for the War Memorial Village this week. They are now all finished and cleaned up and good to go. So if anyone is driving past the Merrill Way, Chellaston Road junction, if you look over your shoulder, you'll see some bungalows that you'll hopefully be very proud of. So these bungalows are truly, a glimpse into the future in many ways, with heaps of insulation built in, underfloor heating, air source heat pumps, triple glazing, solar PVs, all the things that I love about houses. And the way they sit on the site, in particular with the carports, is truly a sight to behold. It's well worth seeing. So that leaves us now with 2 current sites that we're working hard to finish off. That's Gerrard Street and Perth Street. Perth Street will finish before the end of March, and Gerrard Street very soon after that. So as David's already referred to in his report, we are finding it a bit of a challenge as we continue to work through. I think I put in my report one version of lockdown or another. I think I must have been feeling pretty depressed at the point I was writing the report about that situation. But it is a bit of a challenge for us, because as we have resource issues, so do our subcontractors, suppliers and other people, that help us finish these sites off. So hopefully we'll see those. And one other positive thing, that's not particularly in my report, but I just want to update you tonight, is that we are seeing now quite a considerable number of sites that the council are looking to transfer from the general fund to the HRA for affordable housing. So we really are truly starting to see some real movement on quite a decent number of really decent sites that we're really keen to get our hands on, get stuck into, working very closely with Ian's team. Ian's on the meeting tonight. Hi Ian. And we're looking forward to getting stuck into those to see what we can do. So that's where we are from a new build point of view. Have we got any questions on that?
Lucy has 2 questions.
Mm-hmm. Hi Lucy.
Sorry, they're for later on.
Oh okay, right.
Current working arrangements has pretty much been neatly covered off by Maria. She's already mentioned the kitchen and bathroom issue and the fact that we're working hard across the team to ensure resources are prioritised in terms of those most important areas of our work. So if I move on to the last section of our report, this might be the bit that Lucy could be interested in. This is the Green Homes Grant. You'll have heard at the last meeting, I think Maria reported on my behalf, I was down with shingles, that we were supporting the City Council in this council submitting a bid for Green Homes Grant through the Local Authority Delivery Scheme. I think I mentioned to you that the very first round 1, we felt had unachievable timescales. When you consider the work that you need to do to deliver these sort of projects. Government listened to us and gave us a second opportunity to bid. As a result of the funding being undersubscribed, we bid for £900,000 worth of funding to improve over 100 homes with external insulation. And I heard yesterday that that bid's been successful, which is fantastic news for the city. Now, on top of that 900,000, we've also been informed that round 2 isn't a bidding round that we have to bid for. It's an allocation that's issued to each authority, and Derby City is being issued £1.4 million under round 2. So that gives us £2.3 million to spend actually within the next year. The deadline for round 1B is that work's got to be complete by the end of September. It's frustrating that the government have not given much longer to complete work under round 2. That's got to be finished by the end of December next year. So, clearly, myself and Ian's team have worked very closely together on this. Have been doing a lot of work through the supply chain and checking out the capacity through contractors that are working on our framework, ones that we know can do a great job. And we feel that it's achievable to be able to deliver that work over that time period. Now, the majority of the work will be targeted at private homes. £10,000 grants available for people living in a private home as long as they pass the income test, and that should, broadly speaking, cover the full cost of external wall insulation. So it's great that we're able to lead by example as a local authority. The City Council have been brilliant in allowing us to project manage the work. It's work that we've been doing over the last few years anyway, so it's going to be great to see similar improvements across the private sector to the ones that we've delivered across the public sector over the years. Now, we have got some council houses that still need insulation. We've got a few blocks of Wimpy No Fine flats, and some of those blocks will benefit from this scheme. But we've also got another initiative that's about to start this year also. I think I mentioned in the past our partnership with Nottingham City Homes, the Full House Retrofit Energy Sprung initiative, as it's been called, over in Nottingham, and we've been partners in that work, and we've agreed now that we're going to refurbish 48 flats at Mackworth. These are the ones that just sit off Knightsbridge. Now, for the flats there, we're looking at external wall insulation, ground source heat pumps, and some additional solar PV on the roof. There's already some on the roof, but we're looking to fit some more as well. So that's going to be an example really of how we can retrofit those homes to get them very close to being carbon zero. And we will, even the flats that we're going to refurbish through the Green Home Grant, follow up and put low carbon heating system in those as the heating systems reach a point of expiry there. So it's great that working with the City Council we're able to lead by example, show what can be done, and absolutely make sure that we come kicking and screaming out of lockdown with some great work to improve energy efficiency and decarbonise the stock across the whole of the city. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into it, as are members of my team. But a big thank you to Ian and his team, because they have genuinely led on this. We've supported them along the way, and it's great, a great example of Team Derby, how we work together, how we get so much out of working together. It's great. Even that's something myself.
Right. Thanks very much, Sean. As you say, everybody says great news. I've got Lucy, Jen, and Ian who wish to comment. Lucy first.
Thank you, Chair. The first one is actually to ask about your comment on getting access to some goods with Brexit happening, and whether you've actually reported this through to the council, because the council has a Brexit impacts working party or something, and if they don't know, then I think they ought to be made aware of that and the impacts it's having on service delivery.
Yeah. We do in that respect, we're part of that group, Lucy. We do feed that.
You are already excellent. The second thing is the question as to how private owners, or in some cases it'll be private, not home occupiers but lets, should know that there's money to bid in for and get involved in the spend of this, whatever it was, 2.3 million. How's that being publicised? Are you knocking on doors? Are you expecting people to come and get in touch? What's the mechanism for that?
Well, we're talking to the council at the moment about a joint marketing strategy, and we need to make sure that this message is out there loud and clear. Now, there's a number of different options that homeowners or landlords can go down to achieve improvements in energy efficiency and access grant funding. The local authority-led scheme is specifically kind of targeted around areas where you can get value for money by working in certain parts of the city. And for that particular scheme, we're targeting owner-occupied homes across our estates that live in properties that have not received the benefits of improvements.
How are you targeting them? Are you putting leaflets through the doors? Are you knocking on the doors, speaking to people?
Leaflets through the doors. We can spot them because they're quite obvious to spot, to be fair. We've already started to share some of the details with our contractor, who've got good experience at marketing these types of schemes as a result of working on them over the years. But we're also going to put some big banners across the flats when we've got the scaffold up there. We're going to use every opportunity we can to let people know that there are these opportunities. But even if you don't engage us through the local authority-led scheme, homeowners and private landlords have got the chance to apply for the voucher scheme. So, it's absolutely something that everyone within the city, whichever corner you live within, you've got an option. So I think it's about the city and Derby Homes having a joint campaign, that gets that message out there. As you know, Lucy, I'm chairing the housing aspect of the climate change group, working very closely with the City Council. And I think it's a big challenge for us, to make sure that we make it easy for people out there to access these grants, apply for them and have the work done. I think we really need to see ourselves as a facilitator in that.
May I ask whether this is something that we can also work with other housing providers, social housing providers on this? Because I know in the New Zealand area, there's quite a few properties, I can't remember who it is with now, but Lakeside or somebody, Riverside maybe. There's somebody there who's got a social housing provider.
Absolutely, you'd be right, Lucy.
Can we link to them and do quite a lot at a time?
Yeah, we can do that, yeah, and that's something that we'll be doing through the group. I've got a couple of seats available around the table on my group for the private housing sector, and already we're starting to see some interesting people.
Yeah, I was thinking of spending the money through them because we've not got a lot of time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge here is contractor capacity. The contractors can't do so much, and one of the real problems with this sector is that it's yo-yoed every few years. There's either been shed loads of work or nothing. So I really feel for the contractors in this area, and we've absolutely pushed our contractor to also consider local employment and training opportunities as part of this initiative as well. Now, it's tough when the work has to be complete by December, but we've got other work that we're looking to carry on beyond then. For example, insulating the cast irons around Allington. I want to get on and do that over the next 2 to 3 years. So that might just give that longevity to the process, to be able to have the confidence of bringing in.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Sean.
Jen.
Hi, Sean. Possibly a question which is slightly left field, but it kind of relates to making properties more environmentally friendly. I know that you've put electrical charge points into new properties that integrate with electrical cars. I'd actually be interested in buying an electrical vehicle, and I'm just wondering if there might be some scheme that could be offered to residents to have an electric charge point included into older properties to help encourage the uptake of this.
Absolutely. I think we can give that some thought, Jen. That's a brilliant idea. I mean, I was bowled over by one of our electricians who suggested putting USB sockets in when we do the electric periodics. This takes it a stage further than that, and also encourages low carbon form of transport as well. Yeah, I'll take that back to the team and work that up, Jen.
Okay. Right. Ian.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say, Chair, I thought that was a very, very positive report from Sean, particularly the additional sites from the General Fund and the funding for external cladding that we managed to get in conjunction with the City Council in Ian. I think all that working together has come out very well, and it's a very positive report.
Great, thanks, Ian.
Okay. Right, if there's no further questions, moving on then to Claire. A5 Housing Services Update.
Thank you, Chair. So I have 3 areas contained within my report this time. The first one being the amalgamation of a couple of homelessness grants from the Ministry of Housing for next year. So you'll be aware of the Flexible Homeless Support Grant and the Homeless Reduction Act Homeless Reduction Grant, sort of mouthful, that we received last year. This year, those 2 grants have been rolled into one, helpfully, and is now simply called the Homelessness Prevention Grant. And our allocation in Derby has increased by just a little over £240,000, taking us to £986,280 for the year 2021-22. This is really good news for us, and clearly reflecting the central government's understanding of the potential impacts around COVID and homelessness, not just in terms of people's loss of income, but also the emotional effects of Corona and the potential implications around increased levels of homelessness as well. I haven't put it in the bid, but actually just today, the Ministry of Housing have also reopened their Rough Sleeping Initiative grant opportunity with a closing date of the 8th of March, and that we'll be bidding into that. That's a bidding process. So I will update you next time in terms of that, where we get to with that one. The second area of my report gives quite a bit of detail about the severe weather emergency provision in Derby, and this runs from the 1st of December until the 31st of March, and is a multi-agency response to cold weather, and is primarily designed to ensure that nobody dies on the streets of Derby during the winter period, and particularly within the colder months of the winter. And I've set out in 4.2 the various initiatives that run under the severe weather provision during that period. And I suppose it's just worthy of note that historically, pre-COVID, we would have had a Churches Night shelter that would run in the city each year. So we've not been able to do that this year because of the COVID protocols around shelters. So we have been able to mitigate to some extent against that by working with the Safe Space Partnership and operating sleeping pods within the City Mission building. And we've also increased our capacity in partnership with a couple of supported housing providers to create some additional capacity for shared housing, one of which being a COVID property in terms of being able to access if you are COVID positive. And I suppose my third update, when I was writing this back in December, trying to look for something really positive at the time, was just a real reflection on the Symphonia concert that occurred at Parklands View on the 22nd of December. It was a really lovely end to what's been a really challenging year. To see that concert taking place and the enjoyment of the residents that attended. It was picked up by the BBC, who ran a programme on East Midlands Today, and it was just a really good example of something lovely happening at the end of 2020. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I would say good old BBC at last have reported something positive to do with Derby Homes, and what we did, I just can't believe it. Well done, Claire.
Right. Lucy, you've got a question.
It's not so much a question, but it's actually a feeling of celebration, because I think this is a brilliant report, Claire. It just shows how much and how positive that determination is actually, how it's delivering for Derby and for people who are at the bottom of the housing ladder in Derby. And I think it's absolutely great. If there's any way that we can turn this round and tell, whether it's the BBC or whether it's, maybe there is a piece here for BBC TV to come out and do something on how we're dealing with homelessness in Derby, and that's why you don't see people on the streets like you used to.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're certainly forever pushing the door to try and get some positive press interest around the rough sleeping agenda. I'm hopeful that when the Ministry of Housing publish the rough sleeping estimate figures, which I understand are going to be published at the end of February, that we will then be able to gain some and galvanise some press interest around our figures locally. And we're at the moment working through putting together that press release in anticipation so that we can use that opportunity to push our positive news story out.
Yeah, that might be a good time. Thank you very much.
Right. Jeanne.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Claire. Just wanted to sort of pick up about the positive stuff about the safe space and the fact sort of like within the pandemic, just how important that service is and having kind of like looking back to sort of when we were sort of thinking about what did we want in that, what a good decision it was to have the paramedic there. I personally know the person who fulfills that role, and she is extremely dedicated, has won lots of awards and stuff for her sort of the way she works and things. But yeah, just sort of like looking back, just thinking it was so good that we put all of these things in place, and that you had the forethought to sort of see how the service could develop and what was needed for it. So yeah, so well done.
Oh, thanks, Shan. Just to say, in terms of Tracy, the paramedic, we have had confirmation this week, in fact, that for 2021-22, the CCG are going to take on funding that post. And I think and mainstreaming that post moving forwards. And I think that's where some of these grants really help us to test concepts. So we're able to go back in next year's bid and actually reduce that element because we've been able to prove that it worked.
Yeah.
That's really good, Claire. That's really good positive to finish on. That's really good.
Right. Thank you very much, Claire. Yet another good news report. Yeah. We're very positive tonight, yes. Right, A6 then, health and safety update. Maria, are you doing this?
Yeah, I'll do this one, Chair, but very briefly, because I'm just going to ask if there's any questions.
Right. Okay. Before that, Ian, do you want to add anything from the Health and Safety Forum?
Well, I chaired the forum this afternoon, Chair. Everything went well. We had quite a number of aggression and abuse reports against staff, all of which were dealt with properly with the systems that we have. So no complaints about the systems, but it never ceases to amaze me what our staff have to put up with. from some of the people they deal with. And they deserve an ongoing pat on the back for the ongoing work on that.
Ian, is there any sort of trend to the sort of staff, or is it all frontline staff, or is it just across the board generally that is getting abusive?
Well, a lot of the stuff is over the telephone, Bob.
Right.
Some is face to face, some is on the telephone,
right.
And it's just quite a wide range of unpleasant activity.
And it achieves nothing. It never does achieve anything, that sort of thing. Never.
No. Okay. Lucy, I can see you're typing. Did you have a question? No. Okay. Right. In that case, we can move on. David, back to you for A7, the next year's operational budget.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, every year we look at the budget, and one of our key financial points in the year really is the approval of next year's budget. We start that with the obviously the work in the background of my teams, but then the board meeting in November where we go through the details, and you'll recall that discussion at that time. As a result of that, we've got now a proposal here for a balanced budget for next year, which obviously is very pleasing. It's got sufficient funds in it to continue to grow our own stock at a gradual pace, and to invest in the things that the council wants us to invest in, which is fairly narrow but very, very important to them. In particular, things like the Looked After Children programme that we started last year, and the Padley scheme, which we're hoping to bring on very shortly. What I ought to stress is that we have done proper stress testing as required by the regulator. That does suggest that we've got a budget that will work in most foreseeable circumstances. And like Sean, I'd like to thank the council for their support, because this year clearly we haven't reached the level of output on some areas of capital and repairs that we'd like to have done, but the council have not attempted to reduce our fee or anything like that, and that's enabled us to continue with a stable position, not just for our staff but for our customers going forward. So with that in mind, I'd like to sort of draw attention to the recommendations, which is to approve the budget for next year, and also to approve the capital programme. And in principle, the need to borrow money in the longer term from the council, we won't be needing that yet. And if we do actually borrow any money, we will, of course, come back to the board for that specific approval.
Okay, thank you, David. As David said, these have been discussed at some length previously in the year. But if there are any questions, or can we get approval on paragraphs 2.1 through to 2.4?
I approve it. I'm happy with that. We've discussed it.
Chair, may I just have two questions, please?
Certainly, Lucy.
In paragraph 414, there's a comment about income management and delete vacant post. I just wondered whether that was still the right decision, given where we are in terms of rentals at the rent income at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of a restructuring, really, Lucy, in terms of that team. So what we're doing is taking out a post of a manager that we introduced a string of supportive teams at the time of whether you call it the bedroom tax or the under-occupancy charge a few years ago. And that whole supportive element, most of those teams have now gone into either routine income collection or into other areas of advice. So it's really a remnant of a post that is no longer required. So it's not going to impact on the front line.
Okay, thanks for that. Makes sense. And in 418, the capital programme, we're talking about buying new diesel vehicles, likely to be new diesel vehicles. I saw information this week that this year, I'm maybe not sure which year it is, maybe it was 2020, but anyway, a recent year, there have been more purchases of electric cars than diesel cars. far more
Good.
petrol than both. But diesels are definitely falling, and electrics are coming up. Now, I'm not sure what the range of diesel vans is like. Sorry, electric vans is like. But the cost of operating them is significantly lower than diesel. And I think we need to look at the full business case and see whether actually technology has moved on, and for at least some of the fleet we can now go electric or hybrid.
Absolutely, and this is a conversation myself and Sean are having on a regular basis, actually, that we do fully intend to move from diesel to electric once the operational aspects of it are ironed out and we're all clear that we can operate effectively with them. We know that the cost of them up front is significantly greater, but that will be, as you say, offset partially by the lower running costs. What I'm saying here is that the budgeting is for a diesel option. As soon as a viable operational vehicle becomes available, then that's what we'll look at. And obviously that will soak up a bit of cash, but
we have the reserves.
Absolutely, and it's something we are considering as one of our potential priorities.
Yeah, and if there's a business case there, we don't need to worry about the reserves, do we?
No. I've got some good news on that, actually. We are about to purchase our very first all-electric van. It's a small van. It's a smaller van that helps provide our burglary reduction service. But vans, the larger type vans, are lagging a bit behind cars in terms of the speed of technology.
They might go hybrid first.
Yeah, it might do.
Absolutely, and what we are trying to do is to eke out the existing diesels for a few more years, or as long as we can manage to not replace them, so that we can then bring in their replacements as electrical, if that is what turns out to be. And obviously, we originally budgeted for them to last 7 years. They've already gone beyond that. Some of them are nearly at 10 years. There will be a physical limit, and that's why I think we need to keep the money in there for diesel replacements if necessary, but we would obviously love to move to electric if it's operationally successful.
Thank you both.
Right.
As I recall, everybody, I seem to remember this came up before, and wasn't it a case of the electric vans in terms of, we'll call it, miles you can get out of an electric van on a charge, doing the job we do, was quite underperforming, against a normal vehicle. So as Lucy says, perhaps hybrid is the way forward, but I know that before you'd looked at electric vans and you were getting a very short sort of performance out of them before you needed recharging again, particularly the way Derby Homes works from property to property.
I think that's right, Bob. Ian, you had a question?
Yeah, just on the issue of electric vans, Chair. Do we have a figure, Sean, for the average mileage a van does in a day? Because obviously an electric vehicle can be charged every day. And the impression I would have had, and this may be totally wrong, but I would have the impression that since they're all operating in Derby itself, they can't be running up vast mileages if they're going to a few jobs a day. So I would have thought that rather than hybrids, probably electrical vehicles themselves might well be a distinct possibility, because it's not uncommon now for mile ranges to be sort of over the 200 mile marks of 200 to 300 miles is becoming quite common in certainly in cars. I don't know so much about vans, but I would think it would be worth examining, because unless our vehicles are doing a very large mileage for city vehicles, electric vehicles may well be a distinct possibility without having to go through the stage of hybrids first.
Yeah, we'll consider that, Ian. I mean, one of the things that we're doing at the moment in terms of calculating our carbon footprint is looking at the mileage of vehicles. But of course, don't forget, we've got work planning software that ought to manage that journey throughout the day in a really efficient way, and that should reduce it. But some of the vehicles that we've tested recently have been really disappointing, that we're getting 15 to 20 miles out of them before having problems, as Bob mentioned. Some of the larger transit-sized vehicles, I've got a feeling are on the cusp of kind of making that leap where they'll be much more efficient. So it's kind of just waiting for that technology to sort of catch up. And as David mentioned there, we're only buying a few this year, but I think we'll be ready then to buy many more. And I'm with you in a way, Ian, that I'm always a bit frustrated. Maybe hybrid, you're buying a car that's got both engines in. Let's have the confidence in making that leap when we feel it's ready. I'm watching it very closely.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. Alan, yes.
Yes, can you tell me, has the board made a decision on whether it's a policy decision to look towards going to electric vehicles? I myself run a hybrid vehicle, and one of the things that I get concerned about is the batteries. When the batteries are end of life, what happens to them? And it's one of the things that concerns me from an environmental point of view is are we going to fill the world with batteries that we can't do anything with? So my initial question is have we made a decision on whether we should be looking to go towards electric or not?
I don't think we've formally made one that we're actually committed to doing that at all at the moment, Alan. You know, we're still waiting for technology to move on. I mean, one thing that we do is rather than try and learn to be experts ourselves in this field, the City Council's fleet management team provide our vehicles, and they've got experts and teams there, you know, that buy many more vehicles than just for Derby Homes. So we're looking to tap into their expertise, and to be fair, so far, you know, it's not been a favourable option. But you're right, Alan, all of those issues need to be considered in the round in terms of environmental impact.
Yeah, I actually think that then that we ought to have a paper on this, because to me it's a big decision for Derby Homes to make, and we need to make that decision in knowledge of all the full facts of how it's going to affect us. Now, I can understand that there will be some cost savings in that electric is cheaper to run than fuel, than petrol and diesel. However, I do know that, for instance, Lucy's very concerned about the environment, and we need to understand what the impact on the environment is if we make that decision. But what we shouldn't do is what seems to be happening in this meeting here is that we are aiming towards that anyway. I think the board needs to make a definite a view on whether we should be doing it or not, rather than just assuming.
Absolutely, I think that's something that we can bring back, weighing up all of the aspects, Alan.
Chair, it's Maria. Can I just come in?
Yes, a senior comment, Maria.
Yeah, I think, Alan, it was discussed probably before you joined the board. And what we said was that we have got to update our environmental policy or climate change policy, whatever it's going to be called, but we are doing it and coordinating with the council. So Sean will include all of this in that policy, and that will subsequently come to the board for approval.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. I think that's a very valid point that you've made there, Alan, that I know there's a lot of concern about the environmental impacts of batteries and things, so I think we do need to consider it. Okay, if then we can, if there are no more questions yet, can we have approval of those recommendations in paragraph 2?
Recommendation. I think Jen wanted to come in.
Jen. Oh, did she?
Oh, sorry, yes. Thank you, Alan. Sorry, I missed that, Jen. Yeah.
No worries, Mike. It was just really to reiterate what Alan has said, that if we were developing an environmental or climate change policy, we've talked about Derby Homes being at the top of a supply chain and being responsible for a lot of procurement in the city, but we are actually part of a supply chain, and that our responsibility is as much to what happens to waste that the organisation produces downstream as the issue with the batteries, as much as the influence we can bring to bear on people who are supplying us. And I think that would be something really good if we could, to kind of like build into any environmental policy reviews that we do.
Absolutely, I agree with that, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Okay, can we move on then to item A9, draft delivery plan? David again.
Sorry, Jay, missed out A8, which is the...
Oh, sorry, I've turned over 2 pages, yes.
No worries.
Yeah, HRA business plan. It is you, David, yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. There's a couple of items here. One is the usual round of consultation from the council on their proposed rent and service charges increase and their HRA business plan. And this year, for the first time in many years, the council has actually made a decision in January rather than February. Normally, we bring this report in January, council then makes a decision in February, but unfortunately this year, well, it's not unfortunate, it's very good actually that the council made an early decision, and so actually the consultation bit is a bit pyrrhic, and I will try and bring that forward to the November board meeting if we're in a position to do so next year. If not, we might have to be retrospective again next year. But fundamentally, within our normal rent policy is we increase our rents in August each year, the council in April. And so I'm recommending, as usual, that we increase our own rents and our own service charges in line with the council's. That means a 1.5% increase in our own tenants' rents and a 1.1% increase, which has been recommended as the default inflationary increase on service charges, but with grounds and cleaning charges rising by up to 10% where they still are subsidised. If the service charge is covering the full cost, then those increases would be limited again to inflation. So the proposal is for our own rents to be increased basically exactly in line with what the council's already approved.
Thank you, David. Can we approve that?
Approved.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the delivery plan. David?
Yeah, again, thank you, Chair. As usual in January, we also bring the draft delivery plan for your consideration and approval. You will notice that it's, as always, is not 100% complete because there are gaps that we can't actually fill in at this stage. In particular on the risk register, because that goes to our audit committee next month and then back to the board. But equally on any target setting, because the council has to approve our targets. But we do need to have a conversation, as Maria was saying earlier, that target setting at the moment is somewhat difficult because of the knock-on impacts of the COVID pandemic, etc., having a knock-on effect all over the place. So despite all of that, we have been working for this for a couple of months, and as you'll see in the report, a number of senior management sessions have put together the plan as best we can, and obviously putting this forward for your consideration and approval.
Okay, thank you, David. Questions, comments? Lucy?
Yes, thank you. And I've got an overarching question and one specific. The overarching question is, who is the plan really written for? Who's the audience?
Well, yeah, good question. We are obliged under our management agreement to prepare this this delivery plan for the council. So the audience, strictly speaking, is the council, but obviously we'd like it to be readable by any stakeholder, yourselves, any tenant who's interested, the operational board, or anyone else that wants to have a look.
Okay, and sorry, there were two other things. The first one, specific, is on page, well, it's page 73, but it's also page 13 of the plan. And it's point 3.1, which talks about maximising supply of homes in the private sector. And I just thought that this was a very non-smart target. How do we know whether we have maximised or not? And I thought that just needed a tweak in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I mean, I don't know if Claire wants to comment on it, but it's one of those things where because we know that there's going to be this probable tsunami of applications next year, if we put a figure on it, it could immediately be out of place.
No, but it doesn't need, it's the word maximise, I think, that's wrong.
Yeah,
so it needs
I take your point. Yeah.
Make good use of resources too, or something like that. And then on the Appendix 4, service drivers, which I think comes into this as an appendix as well.
Mm-hmm.
There were just one tweak on I think it's COVID-19 is not so often laws but regulations. So I think that's just a wording. And the other thing on the environmental, and this comes back to what Jen's just mentioned, is I think there ought to be a bullet point there on waste minimisation or waste management and minimisation, which doesn't seem to be included there at the moment and could be.
Yeah. Sorry, this is on the PESTL, is it the service drivers?
This is page 22, yeah, the service drivers, Appendix 4.
Yeah, I've got you. Yeah, waste minimisation, I think that's a fair comment.
Waste, it could be management and minimisation or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever Sean likes.
Okay. Then Sean.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
If there's no more comments, can we have approval of this draft with those amendments that Lucy's suggested? Okay. Right. Thank you. Moving on then, A10 Apprenticeship Strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's back with me. I think everybody knows that I love this strategy because I love apprenticeships, and I think the board does too. Obviously, we're looking for the board to approve this strategy tonight, and I don't intend to go through it line by line. There are a couple of things, though, that I do just want to pull out to make sure that everyone is aware. Something that I'm incredibly proud of is how we've managed things this last 12 months. We still took a cohort of apprentices on in the latter half of last year, not without its difficulties, but I think it was really important that we did that and set the right example as a responsible employer. They've all settled very well, and they're all moving forward now with their studies. We've got 33 apprentices at the moment, which is around the number that we like to maintain. We are also really proud of the fact that Derby Homes has spent all of its apprenticeship levy. Board members will be aware that if you don't spend, you have to return. But we are absolutely on top of it, and I certainly would like to congratulate the apprenticeship manager for doing such a fine job of that. Now, the updates to the strategy are mostly to take account of the forever changing landscape in the world of apprenticeships, and as well as towards the back of it, it does talk about the work that we do to support our children in care in the city. We certainly intend to carry on doing that. We also intend to still try and progress traineeships, but additionally, we are looking to see how we can be involved in the new government Kickstart project, which is all around trying to get more of our young people into training and employment opportunities. So we've only this morning agreed that we are going to look at that and work with our colleagues at Derby Adult Learning on that. A further scheme that, again, we discussed this morning was around looking to see if there are young people in the city who have been made redundant from apprenticeships as a result of the pandemic. There is a scheme which has required young people to register, and we'll be looking to see if we've got any opportunities to pick those people, pick anybody up to complete their apprenticeship. I don't want to say a lot more. I think we all know about our apprenticeship scheme and our strategy, our commitment. So I'll take any questions, and I think Sarah was first.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm sure board members won't be surprised to hear me say that I think this is brilliant. It's an issue which I care very, very deeply about. When I was cabinet member, I did a lot of work with Maria and the team to progress this agenda, because it is something that's really important to me. And I'm really delighted to hear that we're considering trying to support and target those young people who may have been forced out of apprenticeships through no fault of their own during these really difficult times. I think that's fantastic. And also, obviously, supporting our looked after children, which is really important. But just one thing linking back to the previous item, I noticed in the draft delivery plan, there is an action which says to work in partnership with local schools and training centres to develop pipelines for young people living in council properties to access apprenticeships and training opportunities. Now, that is fantastic, and clearly, as a provider of training opportunities and apprenticeships, we might be able to obviously provide our young people living in our council accommodation those opportunities within Derby Homes, but also extending that work more widely. And actually, I think as an exemplar, I think Derby Homes is an exemplar to set to other local organisations to demonstrate what can be done when you actually have the will and want to make those effective changes. So just to say, really, it's not really a question, but I'm really proud of it, and I think it's brilliant, and we need to carry on. So great, well done.
Right, thank you, Sarah. Lucy and then Bob.
Yeah, thank you. And as well as celebrating those young people and our care leavers, I also want to just mention older people who have maybe found their feet in later life and opening up new opportunities, because I think that
Yeah.
it's very easy for people in middle age to be forgotten, and it might be that the children are now a bit more independent and you can get back into your own learning, and I think that's a really important element as well. But I just wondered if we could tweak the recommendation to allow the director to do some minor changes, because I read this on paper and I noted some bits that just they're grammar points as part of the thing. So it's just to tweak that so that I can send through some comments in due course and Maria can look through them and say yes or no.
Yep, that's really helpful, Lucy. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem with that, Lucy. Yeah, thank you. Bob?
First of all, Sarah, you stole my thunder. I was going to mention what you mentioned, so you saved me there. And also I was going to say today, I asked Sophie Bancroft if she could certainly just have a list of the apprenticeships that's available from Derby Homes. And I was quite impressed with the list. Most people think Derby Homes only do like gas, electric, bricking. When you see the list, if you get a chance to have a look at the list, it's quite a comprehensive list. So I think we're ahead of the game for our organisation on apprenticeships, and I fully support apprenticeships.
Thanks, Bob. You've actually just given me a link perfectly to the final thing I wanted to let you all know about. Obviously, new apprenticeships are created all of the time, and I'm really proud to be able to tell you that Derby Homes has been working with a training provider as a pathfinder to develop a new apprenticeship for people that work in antisocial behaviour. There isn't an apprenticeship covering that at the moment, and our very own Nick Bale, head of the antisocial behaviour team, has chaired a national group of other providers to actually develop a standard which resolve the national trade body that cover antisocial behaviour and community safety are waiting for the portal to open up again for training providers to be able to get on and log their new courses. But I'm beside myself that Derby Homes have been at the front of developing that. I'm particularly thrilled for Nick Bale because it's a fantastic achievement for him.
Yeah. Congratulations to Nick. Yeah.
I'm a happy girl.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It's a good area for people to go into as well. I think it's good. Another apprenticeship to our list.
Well, if you have a read of the white paper, there's quite a lot about people feeling safe in their homes and the neighbourhoods they live.
Yep.
Yeah. Jen.
Hi, I have got another opportunity that I think might be very supportive, not of apprentices, but of tenants. And I'm just wondering who would be a good idea to speak to about that. I mean, I can give you a very quick overview of what it is at the moment, if it's appropriate or not.
Is it training and that sort of thing, Jen? Right, can I link up with you and we'll get a conversation with you and Sophie?
Yep, sure. Okay, no problems. Thanks a lot.
Super.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Okay, with the amendments that Lucy's going to send through, can we approve this? Yeah, I'll take that as assent. Okay, two brief items. A11, we've got the list of the forward plan of agenda items for noting.
Chair, can I just say, on the plan, on my plan, the date, the date it says 25th of March 2020. Should that be 2021 all the way through?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're quite right. Yes, in fact, all of them ought to say 2021.
There is one that does. There is one that says at the first audit committee with that say.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd bring it to your attention.
Well spotted, Bob. I've not noticed that. Thank you. With that amendment, we'll note that. And then A12, as usual, there are no new relevant disclosures under the Insurance Act. With that, we come to the end of Part A. We move into confidential items. So I'd just like to say thank you to anybody who's been joining us on YouTube, and say good night to you all, and thank you for joining us. See you in 2 months' time. And then we'll move into confidential items.